Hi, this is Radio K, and I am here with Voxtrot. Hi, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm wonderful. It's so great to finally meet you.
Yes,
I was really
likewise.
looking forward to this one. All right, so we'll just jump right into it. And you're from Austin, so you're no stranger to South by Southwest.
That's right, yeah.
So how many times have you played South by before?
I've played, either with Voxtrot or under my solo moniker. I've played South by Southwest every year since I was 19, and I'm 39.
So it's been you're
I
no
missed
stranger.
two because of COVID, but
Yeah.
otherwise, so I guess that means I've played 18 times.
Yeah, so out of all these 18 times, how does this year compare to some of the years in the past now that you're back as Voxtrot?
This year, the show last night at Stubbs, I would say having just one show that you do and concentrate on, I really like. I guess when Voxtrot was first coming up as a band, it made sense. There were some years we played like 10 shows across the week, and it was really fun. And I think that back then it was way more partying involved. Like, it kind of made sense as this 24-hour rolling machine. But now that it's like years have passed and it's more of a professional enterprise, it's great to be able to focus it just on this one big show. So Stubbs outside, I love that stage. It's a really nice atmosphere.
Cool. Do you have so is that one of your favorite venues then, or any other ones you really like?
Well, my original favorite venue is, it's actually not gone, it's moved. But the Emos, which still exists on Riverside, the original one was downtown, and that was where Voxtrot started playing in the beginning, and that was always our spot. So I love that venue, but it's been over on the other side for years now. But I love Stubbs. I like, when the weather's good, which we narrowly made it in the window before the rain last night.
Yeah.
Stubbs is a great atmosphere. I like Mohawk also.
Okay, cool. And Austin, the music scene. What is the Austin music scene? I know it's one of the live music capitals of the U.S. So what is the Austin scene like?
I would say, it's funny because I wouldn't say I feel disconnected from it now, because the past 2 years I've been much more active than the many years before. But I think I can't say that I'm super aware of all of the newer bands in Austin the way that I was when Voxtrot was first starting out. I guess because I was just more in it then, But I think it seems like there's definitely more of an industry presence here than there was back then. But it still seems very supportive to me. There's still some great venues like Hotel Vegas. I would say that's for a smaller venue. That's definitely my favorite. That has the feeling of emos, and the community around that I think is awesome.
Cool. Jumping back kind of into the beginning of Voxtrot, so your first EP was Raised by Wolves, yes?
Technically, yeah.
Technically, and you had the song Start of Something on there.
That's right.
So there's a little bit of a story behind that song, isn't there? The inspiration behind it?
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little more about that?
Yeah, well, the story is that, and I guess the song is not just literally 100% about this, so if you know the story and look for it, you might not.
Yeah.
But the genesis is that I went on a first date with somebody to this club, because I used to live in the UK, this club in Scotland, and on the first date, he ran into his ex-boyfriend and told me partway through the first date that he was going back with the ex-boyfriend, and just left me at this club, and he's like, "You'll be fine, right?" Which in the end, it ended up being I was so into the music that club kind of became the center of my social world. So it actually was a very good thing. But at the time, I was really not nonplussed about it. So kind of a few days later, started writing the song. But a lot of it's take stuff I was reading at the time. So there's a lot of wordplay in that song.
Yeah, it kind of all meshes into that.
Yeah.
So do you like to take a lot of real life experiences and different stories and use that as inspiration within your music?
Yeah, for sure. I kind of find that I was going to say that the best results are when you just tell your life experience with no embellishment.
Yeah.
I was going to say that, but that's not actually always true. I think it's I think it's like sometimes if you're writing from the heart and then you give yourself the freedom to have like, I guess you could say like poetic license with your own life, then that is, I think, kind of whatever feels, because it feels fun. Like if you enjoy writing it, then I think that resonates,
Yeah, and then kind of back onto the Voxtrot. So when you guys formed as a band, how did that like come about? How did you all meet?
The drummer and I have known each other since elementary school. So we've probably been playing together since we were about 10 and 12 respectively. But the rest of them, one of them I met at Berklee College of Music. The rest of them just kind of met in the Austin, at that time there was a very strong house party scene in Austin. So I don't know if it exists anymore. I kind of feel that it doesn't, because there weren't that many places to go back then. There weren't that many cool venues and clubs, so, or at least if you're into indie music. So the house party scene was really strong.
Yeah.
So it'd just be like hundreds of kids of all the way up to ages from their teens up to their 30s every weekend in these people's houses across campus and stuff. And I met, indirectly, we kind of met everybody else at the house parties.
Yeah, so like the music scene that you experienced in the early 2010, up to now, or like versus now, is definitely very different. And has that kind of changed the way you've approached how you like music?
Well, I think a kind of natural byproduct of if you play music and it turns into a career, I think the natural byproduct is that it never stays the same as it was in the beginning. Like that totally casual, innocent thing just can't stay the same. It's like once it becomes a true profession, there's an industry behind you, and yeah, I guess it's like that famous saying, you can never go home, And for a while I felt really sad about that. I would try and be like, oh, I got to recapture exactly that thing, but it's just part of growing up and maturing, is that you learn to express what's actually going on in your life now. To allow yourself to change and to relate to what's actually happening at each part of your life. So now I approach it from the angle of that I've been involved with the music industry professionally for almost 2 decades now. And so I just think about it differently. Like I think actively about how to write from the heart, to write authentically, and be aware that I'm also kind of tending to this, I don't know if business is the word, but it feels like it. It feels like the Voxtrot company, that I'm kind of tending to this thing also, to this professional entity.
Yeah. So with this now 20 years of experience within the music industry, you've grown a ton. If you could go back and look at yourself when Voxtrot started, or when you were really first getting into the music industry, what would you tell yourself? Would you do anything different?
I guess I would tell myself that I would tell myself that a career in music is bigger than just the moment that you're living in. That it's like if you have, if you're a young artist and you have some success early on and there's a lot of buzz around you, it's very, very easy, I would say nearly impossible, to not get caught up in the idea that this outward image of you being a product that's attracting fame, that idea of yourself is not actually what has value. That your image is not what has value, to put it more simply. That it's really what has value is the thing that you're creating. And if you are really having a lifetime career, there's going to be moments where you feel recognized and moments where you don't feel recognized. But if you are truly staying dedicated to what you're doing and you're aware that you're building this thing over a long time, then you can tolerate those waves of joy and despair. And in the end, when you look back, you will see just as the years go on, you'll see that actually like your creations are what are making this kind of long-term sustainable career for you.
Cool, yeah. With the kind of the ups and downs, and I remember in 2010, Voxtrot broke up for a while.
Mm-hmm.
In that period, up until 2022, when you guys announced the reunion tour, what did you do in that span with your music career?
I did 2 solo albums, but they both took me an extremely long time to make. You know, the first one took, I want to say, 5 years. Yeah, the first one took 4 or 5 years to make. The second one took 8 years to make. So actually in that time also, I moved to LA a few times, and I've been doing some like songwriting with other artists. And I honestly feel like in that time, and I was doing some touring with the solo band. I was jokingly call it Ramesh the Band. With Ramesh the Band, we've been doing some touring together as well. So that was starting to feel like more of an actual band unit. A lot of it, I feel like, was just trying to kind of get my bearings again and to reestablish my connection with music, to try to kind of like rededicate myself to it, because I felt pretty lost at the end of Voxtrot 1.0. You know, in 2010 when that ended, was like a total existential, what are we going to do? But I feel like a lot of it was getting reacquainted with the music and really like opening myself up to it again.
Yeah, so definitely that time period where you kind of found yourself in music again, that all led up to now your Voxtrot is back. So yeah. Voxtrot 2.0, I guess we can say.
That's what we call it.
That's what you call it. Yeah. So kind of like what led up to that? How did you guys come about like, hey, we should do this again?
Because we've stayed in contact always from back then, even just for like taxes and stuff. There's a lot of, like, every year there'd be an email, somebody will bring it up, like, should we reissue the stuff and do a reunion tour? And different people, different years, but most of the time, most everybody would be like, sure, maybe this is a good idea, but for some reason, I was always like not into it. I was always feeling like it wasn't the right time, it was too soon, I'm working on the solo career. But for some reason, even though 2022 is also when my second solo album finally came out, even still, like, leading up to it, I felt like, okay, actually this feels like the right time. I don't know how to, for some reason, for the first time in many years, it just felt to me like this diversion, I don't know, this dichotomy of whether it was the music of Voxtrot or whether it was the solo music, it no longer seemed so important to me as an identity. For some reason, I suddenly felt more like, oh, no matter what, like, all of these are songs that came through me and then came really into full existence through the collaboration with other people. So regardless of the name that's attached to it, I feel good about doing it.
Yeah, awesome. And you had the reunion tour. How was that? Do you have any favorite cities in North America that you played?
Well, I guess it's really hard to pick. And I guess when you do that, like, across geographically, like, all the way across, it's like, I feel like the cities have such distinct essences, you know, that it would be really hard to pick. I mean, you know, the first one was in New York, and it was the most ruckus. It was like the most explosive, like, especially audience-wise. So, but actually, I don't know, LA kind of was the same too. I mean, I felt like each place, it's like, because I have so many memories of touring these cities over and over again, it's like each place I was like reacquainted with the essence of that place. So it's actually pretty hard for me to choose a favorite one, but it was overall just like the response was absolutely above and beyond what we had expected.
I remember, like, personally, because I had followed you guys on Instagram before you re-announced your reunion, and I saw the, like, reunion post, and I was like so excited. And now to just hear about kind of the background of that and how it's been on your end is so cool. And you guys remastered your first 2 EPs and put them into an album. Right. How do you feel about that?
Like, conceptually, how do I feel about that?
Sure, or just anything.
I feel like, well, it's funny because, like, at the time the first actual full-length album came out, the self-titled one, you know, I think a lot of people said, like, oh, it would have been better and way more commercially successful to just release those first 2 EPs just as an album, which might be true, actually. I mean, I would say statistically that probably is true, that if we'd done that, it probably would have sold more copies than the actual debut album. But that said, like, in the years that have passed since that debut album came out, I've actually grown to, like, really love and appreciate it. So I'm really glad that it exists. It wasn't a totally easy experience, but I'm really glad it exists. And so in putting those 2 EPs together to release on vinyl, it seemed like I was, like, into the idea, you know, but I also was like, man, I don't want to have to listen to people say, like, this should have been the first Voxtrot album. But basically nobody said that, so yeah. I might just be fighting with myself.
I feel like we all do that a little bit. Anyway, this has been great. I'm so happy I got a chance to talk to you.
Yes, likewise.
And before we leave off, do you have any advice for our Radio K listeners? Any wise words? Anything you'd just like to leave us with?
No. I would say, gosh, a lot of pressure advice, wise words. Well, I'm thinking, like, in terms of radio, like, music lovers specifically. I would say that what feels like the most important thing that I have learned over time regarding love of music is to love music for the sake of the actual music, is to be, you know, like, I think especially in streaming culture, there's a lot of, like, because of playlists and because of the constant curation of everything, you know, that everything is like a playlist for every mood and every concept, to where, like, you technically never have to be exposed to anything that you don't curate and choose. But I think to have as open of a heart as possible, and to just, like, you know, listen to whole albums and to expose yourself to, like, what any artist or band is trying to communicate about themselves, and to be open to it, because you might be moved by something that you don't expect to be moved by. And it's like, you can always get into dead ends of thinking that you're, like, you've done it, like, you've saturated your mind with all the music you can put into it, but there's always more and more genres and more artists and bands to discover that you have not thought of it at all, that you can be moved by. So
cool. Thank you so much. This has been Voxtrot, and I'm with Radio K, Real College Radio.